Good evening, everyone. It's now time to call the October 13th meeting into order. Can you please rise and join me for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mayor Harper.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Pickler.
Here.
Commissioner Gilligan.
Here.
Commissioner LaPiccolo.
Here.
Commissioner Spiegler.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Fantastic. Unless there's any questions or changes for tonight's agenda, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Make that a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those have the same right. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the proclamation presentation. Now this proclamation is going to be a little bit different. This is pretty special. Thanks to a group of blind line members, Peter Crumley is also here to represent this group. They were able to work hard along with state leaders to have a stronger enforcement for the North Carolina White Cane Law, which protects the right of way of individuals who are blind or visually impaired. Thanks to their efforts, these violations have now become a citable law enforcement offense. And congratulations to this group for getting this done. I know it was a big undertaking, and Mr. Crumley's going to talk about that here shortly. So on behalf of the Board of Commissioners and myself, I would like to present you with this proclamation. And it reads as such. It is declaring October the 15th as White Cane Safety Day. Whereas the white cane has become a symbol of mobility and independence for the blind walker, and whereas the white cane is an extension of the blind walker, and whereas the white cane provides assurance that the blind walker that the path forward is clear and safe. And whereas the white cane provides greater independence and societal inclusion to the blind walker. And whereas to all those at sight, the white cane serves as a reminder of their responsibility to yield to and protect the safety of the blind walker. And whereas the white cane identifies the blind walker for the sighted to take action to ensure safe passage of the blind walker at designated road crosswalks. And whereas once a white cane walker is extended their white cane into the crosswalk, all drivers shall come to a complete stop and remain fully stopped in all directions until the white cane walker has fully completed their crossing. And whereas the guide dog walker and or harness guide dog are stated as being equivalent to the extension of the white cane, thus shall be granted all the rights bestowed upon the white cane walker under the North Carolina White Cane Law. And whereas drivers shall not block designated crosswalks in a manner that impedes straight line travel for the white cane walker or guide dog walker across full travel of crosswalks. And whereas failure to comply with the North Carolina White Cane Law is a citable, unlawful offense. And now therefore, I, Sharon Parker, Mayor of the Town of Beaufort, State of North Carolina, hereby proclaim October 15, 2025 as White Cane Safety Day within the Town of Beaufort, North Carolina, and invite all citizens to duly note this occasion. We will also be holding an event on October the 15th downtown. I guess Spear will be talking about that event as well, so I won't spoil it for you. Where we will also read this proclamation. So without further ado, I'd like to present this to you, and I'd like to have my board members join me as well, because this would do better. Sure, and I'm going to go right, Peter. This is a wonderful proclamation, so this one has a lot more teeth. I know that we've been working really hard on getting this so that there can be a sizable law enforcement for those who apply to the offer. I want to thank you as group members that have made this possible. This is a proclamation on behalf of us, and I know that you do have a short presentation for us.
First off, thank you very hard for providing the proclamation. The commissioners have found to support the necessity to take the time to deal with the blind. So important. When I step out into a crosswalk, it's always unsure, even when I know that I'm supposed to have the right of way it is to be safe to cross. It often just comes down to a best guess. You lose your vision, you lose about 2/3 of your sensory input. So you have to rely on other skills and other methods. And those who have taken the challenge to come walk with me, you experience shutting your eyes, keep the closed, and take the experience to see how hard it is. They will tell you firsthand that it is just that, a best guess, it's a risk assessment. I know that my friend, Mr. Melvin Cooper can attest to that on a walk that he took with me. But it's just really important. The White Team Law has been on the books since the 30s. In 1994, the Structural Sentencing Act mandated that all laws have an assigned penalty attached to them. Unfortunately, the White Team Law was overlooked, remained overlooked for many years. And it was my friend Bill Graham, 22, up in Raleigh, blind person, blind line, realized that the law could not be cited. And so we went to work. And we went before the state legislature 23, did not get out of committee this year, with the help of Representative Carnster from Frederick County. Got to the House, got made part of the Public Safety Act of 2025. It was unanimously passed in both houses, something that is pretty unheard of these days. And it's been signed into law. So what it does is to put that class 2 misdemeanor penalty is now attached to law. It's citable as of December 1st, 2025. And while I don't want my friends and neighbors to be cited for it, it is something that needs to be there to protect people like me. And I've had many very unusual creative experiences this year in our little town of Beaufort, from drivers who just don't want to take the time to get through the line. So thank you for your concerns and your awareness and for this wonderful little town of ours.
Thank you, Peter, once again. We're gonna do a group picture if you don't mind, so just stand right here. We're gonna have some people come to your left. Melvin and Bucky and Paula and John. All right, why do that? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Peter.
You do.
Thank you, too, John.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say, I didn't want to.
Okay.
Talking minus. So October 15th at 11:30 on the corner of Front Street and Craig Street. The town's gonna hold a joint event and please be there to start the educational experience. Anyone who wants to come attend, we'd love to have you there. It's a joint Lions Club in town event. And once again, appreciate the town for supporting us.
Thank you, Peter.
We have no lines for that.
Okay, now. Just a minute. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Now we have 6 items on the item of consent. The first one is the approval of the minutes from September 8th and September 22nd. The second one is the 2026 Board of Commissioners meeting schedule. The third is the capital project budget amendment number 4 for street rehabilitation and pedestrian improvement. Now this recognizes the grant from the North Carolina Coastal Federation for helping us install pervious concrete on Orange Street. We want to thank them for publicly investing in Gopher. The fourth one is Race to the Holy Event application. It says hosted on the Town of Shamrock Group. This is going to be their annual event on December 13th. And I think one of the commissioners, I believe, are volunteering, Commissioner Gilligan, to participate in this. But it's an excellent fundraiser each year, it's bigger and better. The fifth one is the Christmas parade in Santa House event application from the Beaufort Business Association. The Christmas parade will be on December 6th at noon. And then Santa's house, which used to be my office, is open on November 28th to the 29th. December 6th, 13th, and 20th, from 1 to 3 p.m. And we thank the DDA for the continuous support in helping us celebrate these holiday traditions. We have a resolution, which is the donation of surplus rescue equipment for donate some surplus equipment at Harvard Community College. So with all items on consent, do I have a motion to approve these items? So we've got a motion to the boss of the Roger. So beyond it, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Now we're gonna move on to public comment. Robert Harper, okay, Mr. Parker.
Robert Harper, 1020 Broad Street. Looking over the agenda for tonight, especially the packet. There's the very next item, which is PCD. That's parking lot, for lack of a better name. For 2 months at $10,000. There were a couple of items in here that were really concerns to me. It should be to the public in general. Not only is it $10,000, but you're obliging the town to pay all the utilities for those 2 months, garbage collection, liability insurance, and the other insurance. And during that period of time, any maintenance or repairs that are needed are going to be paid for by the time, regardless of the time when those damages or needs to repair arose. Likewise, in the agreement, section 9C, the leaseholder has absolutely no obligation for maintenance or repairs that occurred during those 2 months, again, regardless of when those occurred that need occurred. The point being that there's a lot more than just $10,000 at play here. Section 7 says there's the only permitted activities parking during these 2 months. But then in the letter that came out, in the agenda, there was something about widening Ann Street to allow better circulation. Now, is this just cars or is it city equipment? If there's city equipment coming in and out of this parking lot, and any damage occurs to the pavement or any other fixture, we're liable for that. And there may be some debate about that, and then we get into litigation, which is not really something that the town does very well at. There's a lot more liability here than just simply using the parking lot. Who benefits from that? Who benefits for the town taking on that liability? If the public needs that much parking, as was alluded to, then they can just pay for the parking like they're doing already. So I don't see any benefit there from this lease. There's a rumor on the street that it's town employees. If the town employees need more parking, they can park on Ann Street like the rest of the public does for free, or places on Front Street just adjacent to town hall. If it's for construction access, then here it goes back to my point about how much damage should be done. To me, it's just not a real win-win situation here, and I think all of us in town are feeling a little nervous about the amount of debt that we're going into. And this is $10,000 that I don't see that we really need, at least it wasn't well articulated in the agenda packet. 2 things. I would actually not do this. And number 2, at some point, the public really does, out of curiosity, to know how much can we owe, what's the total debt to the town and vote. I mean, because ultimately, those of us on this side, or really all of us are liable for that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. That's it, okay. Now we're gonna move on to old business. Number 1, we have the Taft Family Ventures Development at Brady Drive. And.
Mayor, I'll get it started, if that's all right.
And
So this is coming back before the board this evening at your previous council meeting. There was a request for sewer allocation for some property in between what's now Highway 75 House and NC 101, behind the bunkhouse and in between Ronnie Road area. And as part of that, the developer explained that what they were looking to do is create some housing. Here, rental housing, which is something that Beaufort has not had new rental housing construction in, let's say, at least over 2 decades. So as part of that, though, the board said, you know, we hear what you're asking for. There's been promoting workforce housing in our comprehensive plan and so forth. So what came out of the meeting was a request for the developer to put together some type of agreement that would be tied to the sewer allocation for the property and look at things that dealt with rental prices and so forth, some units of a project. As part of that, the developer, the representatives are Mr. Kevin Johnson and the other Tom Tapp, and then Sammy Whaley and oh God, he's gonna love, and Phil Lewis on the other property. Phil's gonna love that I forgot his name. Anyway, they've been working together on putting together a draft development agreement, which covers different areas of pricing. Our manager, Mr. Zapp, has spent a great deal of time in this, especially back and forth with the attorney and Mr. Johnson. We appreciate all that they've done in light of that. But Mayor, I will say that this is something that is different. In my tenure here with the board, I don't believe that any type of agreement has even come forward. So I'm not gonna say this is cutting edge, but this is something different for the board. Hence why you have draft in front of you tonight. And again, I know that Mr. Zapp, Mr. Grady, and also Mr. Johnson and Mr. Tapp are here to answer any of those specific questions as we get into where we are with this agreement.
okay. Would you like me to start with just having the board ask you questions first, and then we can get Mr. Tapp up and Mr. Johnson up as well after that?
Yes, ma'am, I'll try and do my best. I'm not as versed as this as others are. Yes, ma'am.
So has any questions for first? You did such a great job. So if we want to have Mr. Johnson and Mr. Tapp come up and see if the board has any questions for you.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Tapp, I'm here on behalf of our family company, Tapp Family Ventures, to spent a great deal of time working with city staff as well as some of our elected officials to try to craft an agreement that satisfies the needs of us as developers, as well as satisfies a priority for the town of Beaufort, which is to create quality, safe housing for the residents. And so we have spent a lot of time on this. We don't want to call it a development agreement, we call it a sewer allocation and workforce housing agreement. And happy to sit here and answer any questions that you may have. We're proud of what we do and proud of what we can bring here. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, who has questions for Mr. Tapp?
And I think also we're noting, we do have a current draft that addresses, I believe, all of the points that were all 4 of the points that were brought up there, fairly easy to address on our part. So we do have a draft out there that takes into account all of this.
Okay. Look at what?
You have agreements like this with other communities and everything.
Yeah, that's correct. Typically, they come a little bit later in the game, right? So, we sort of define this around the sewer allocation process, understanding that there is I won't call it a capacity issue, but like every community, there are constraints on sewer and water, and just general utility infrastructure. Typically, this comes into, account in, say, high tax areas where there's a give on some affordable housing or to secure a tax abatement. We've also seen it, to get actual utility capital projects done. But again, this is just a little bit earlier in the game, but it's actually great because it gives us a chance to spend a lot of time with staff. I mean, heck, we don't even have a sketch plan, yet, at the very least. So it's nice to be having these conversations early. But yes, it's something we do fairly consistently, across 4 or 5 states.
Thank you. I just, a few clarifying things, with the rental criteria, with AMI, that's, off of gross income.
That's correct.
And, to clarify that y'all are not gonna be getting a tax benefit from including these units.
We have not asked for a tax benefit, you know, obviously, anything to help with our.
Well, with the federal government. I'm sorry.
That's correct, so that's correct, there's no tax abatement associated with this, as well as there's no tax credits, which I think is what you're talking about from the federal
Yes.
government, the low income housing tax credits. No, nothing like that at all, this is a market rate project that out of comments that we got from staff, we have offered up a certain percentage for what we would call sort of lowercase a affordable housing. Capital A affordable housing typically is what you're asking about, which are low income housing tax credit projects. This is workforce housing is another kind of what we're listening for.
And the final thing is we received, this afternoon, some figures on rental prices and. Just wondering how it differs from the rental criteria in the draft contract. Is it the same thing, just presented in a different way?
I believe that's correct. So the rental criteria is specific, is more of a generalized criteria that we have across all of our portfolio to abide with fair housing laws. What we presented here really more explains what our current budgeted rents are, and then tracking off of that what rents would be for the workforce housing units, which are qualified by the Federal Housing and Urban Development Department at 80% of area median income versus 100 rate or being market rate.
Okay, I was just kind of testing out some figures to see like what kind of workforce would be living in this housing. And so say we're going off your 1-person rental criteria to not exceed 50,120 gross. And say in an ideal world that we only want to spend 30% of our income on rent, which is probably higher here in Beaufort, then we're gonna need to spend about $1,430 a month. I got those figures on my cell phone. Is that in line with one of the figures that you sent us, Matt? I can't see the figures right now.
It's the sheet.
Yeah, sorry, I turned it off the group meeting.
So ask the question one more time if you don't mind.
So it's basically, I was trying to figure, on your $57,170 maximum.
For a single.
For a single
Correct,
person, I was just gonna, try to calculate how much of their income, 30% would be, it would be about $1,429 a month. Is that in line with one of the figures that you provided for rent?
So no, so again, these are 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath, with the garage, so our expectation would typically not have a single earner, that would be attempting to qualify for this. What we're showing as the workforce housing rents are about $1,836 a month, so it's about $400 more. But if you back into the 2-person household, that's where they start to make the most sense. So you're actually kind of asking 2 questions. So one again is TAP Management Group, which is our management entities rental criteria that we've chosen. It's based on some fairly well-known facts. We don't want to spend more than 30% of your annual income on housing, or you become rent or housing burden. But we came up with the number of 33%, so we require folks to basically make three times your monthly rent in order to qualify for our market rate code. So they're somewhat two different measures of the same thing. What you're asking about on a single person, no, technically a single earner earning. What was the number you gave? The 57,000, would not qualify under the R rental criteria. There is an opportunity for us to adjust rental criteria to max that, but it gets very, and I'm not trying to dodge the question, it gets very murky because if we start to do it for any one subset of folks, then it starts to trip the fair housing requirements across the board. And so I think that's the one that, you know, we're prepared that this is a common question that comes up. And so I think the short answer to that is, you know, we would need to go back and address both our rental criteria requirements as well as what we're showing as workforce housing affordability on our current budget.
But Ms. Gilby, the project is 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-car garages, or 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2.5-bath, 2-car garage. They're not really set up for a single teacher per se, but 2 teachers, maybe. You know, 2 fire. Yeah, it's not, it's an 1,800, 2,000 square foot, townhouse. It's not set up for that, well,
Are you saying that this development will have no one bedroom
That's right.
at all?
very strong.
Okay,
It's just all 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom.
so if you have a single person living in a 2-bedroom, you're saying they wouldn't qualify no matter what, or they
No,
would
no,
qualify?
they would just have to earn, they would have to earn more than the 57,000 that she's referenced, which is what qualifies you for the 80% of area median income.
What if you had a family of 3 living in a 2-bedroom house, but only one of them worked in that one?
Yes, under the current protocol, under our rent requirements, which are not set by any governing body, that's an internal tax mechanism, they would not qualify.
So you need to have at least 2 earners?
2 earners, or you would have to earn, a little bit more, approximately 60.
So they would count if you said 3 persons, so husband and wife. And
Or
a child.
only one of them worked?
So that's 73,000. That income level is 73,000 for 3 persons.
They need to earn at least 3,000 to qualify for this, but no more than what?
No,
No more than 73,000.
no more than, that's right.
That's how HUD, housing and urban development, that's how, the chart that we said earlier, it breaks out on the side. Again, whether you're 2-person, 3-person, 4-person, 5-person house, assume, mother, father, 3
So
kids.
Commissioner Hill, you just asked about somebody earning 57,000, did you mean they can't earn more?
That's right.
That's right.
To qualify for the 80%, it is admittedly levy, I mean, it's understandable. But
So the diagram, I think that Commissioner Billiken is talking about that we received just this afternoon, and there's the column with the 60%, 80% and 100%, but I think that's what Commissioner Billiken is referring to. Are y'all, considering 60% as well, or?
no, that's just, I mean, we just can't really cut that out of it, I mean, it's just, that's what the major that put out, says 60, 80, 100.
So you
That's
would
more
not go, you would not go lower?
No, it's not for this project. We do have a capital and affordable housing division that focuses on folks that make 30 to 60% of area median income, but that's back to your earlier question, those are low income housing tax credit projects. Because you really need a federal subsidy to make a project work for rents to be affordable for someone at 30 to 60% of income. I will say, look, the short answer to this is, we're able to craft this in a way I think that satisfies most, if not all, concerns. It does get difficult. Again, that's the one cohort that could not afford even our workforce rents under their current criteria and our current rents would be a single earner household, right? And as of right now, that's not really something that's gonna be a focus of ours. This is more family, larger houses versus a call it 1-bedroom unit, as we just asked.
Right, I guess it just tripped me up because it was included in.
Yeah.
So I had to dig into it.
Well, honestly, I think he asked me if you should hide that, and I said, no, it's easier just to go on the beach. Somebody get on the website and say, hey, why didn't they include
Right.
this? Yeah, I can see it's public record.
Housing and urban development, it doesn't even put it out, Novographic, they accept in one corner, that goes to their model and could anywhere in the country.
yeah, anywhere in the country, you know, what the criteria is, where you're at. It spits out, you know, the information. So,
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so the presentation that they are referring to is up on Spring
Yes,
and Tiny Print.
that's how they put it out.
you gotta love it, it goes to 12 person.
That's
That's the word.
I'm sorry, some of the pertinent information, if you want to take a look at that. Any further questions?
I have no questions.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Cooper.
I see you drafting through this keyword that most developers sometimes throw in is how this is gonna benefit the town. And I think for a side of that is a lot of, like I said, a lot of developers throw that in. How is this gonna benefit now?
You asked me that question?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Mr. Commissioner Cooper. Yeah, I was putting in the town, well, I will tell you that, again, we're known, throughout the southeast for creating safe and desirable housing locations, everywhere we go. The property tax difference in what you're gonna be receiving from this project going forward versus, it's sitting there at raw land. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can tell you it would be significant. And again, we're not in here asking for a tax debate, right? We expect to pay market taxes when this thing delivers, which will be a significant boost to the tax base. We will more than likely have to work on infrastructure improvements, related to the, intersection closer to the school. Again, that's not being, speculated on in this correctly because we're so early in the process, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're happy to work with.
And the second one that a lot of developers throw in too is, that tax will assist the town in its long-term goal. I'm sorry, I can't hear me.
I can hear you fine, yes, sir.
So. How is that tax going to assist us in the long-term goal?
I don't know, I'm not one for, this, that seems like something you guys have a pretty good handle on. I mean, yeah, we're seeing a lot of wonderful stuff here in Beaufort, and I know you got a lot of priorities.
Part of it, Mr. Cooper, I read in your strategic plan or whatever that was put together a couple of years ago, and they talked in there, creating communities like this. Townhouse, gave examples of that in your very this strategic plan. And so as Mr. Warner pointed out, there's not a lot of rental properties in Carter County, frankly, not just Beaufort, but also across the bridge. I mean, I looked this afternoon for if you were gonna try to rent a townhouse. I found two of them, one here in Beaufort, one across the bridge. That was it. So there's a need for it. There's a need for quality, you know, safe housing. So we're trying to help with an investment, you know, here with providing the town what you've asked for, which is a portion of this being workforce housing.
And I'm not denying that, we definitely need more rental and single family homes here in both, but also at the same time, at a very reasonable cost. Forgive me if I don't want to quite understand, rent roll?
Yes, sir.
Rent roll.
Yes.
Yeah, so rent will just be a unit number of beds, the person that lives in it, what their rent is, so it's just a roster of your residents.
And you also asked us about Freedom of Information Act, I guess not giving out information to just anyone inquiring in terms of bypassing the Freedom of Information Act altogether.
No, sir. I think, again, we work questions asked, we work with a lot of other municipalities across the southeast, and that was actually a piece of information that was in one of those agreements that the city wrote in there, the town attorney. But Mr. Grady helped us out with that, like we said earlier, regarding modified the agreement to take that out, and we don't really have anything to hide. It's public information once we submitted any reporting on who's living in the property, the city of town.
Was that to cover personal identifying information?
I don't know the original intent, but my point was to the developer, they did agree and they did edit the agreement accordingly. Once we have that type of information, it's public record, so we can't not disclose it. There are some exceptions out there, but generally agree that we're not going to disclose it as something that we can't do on air. And they accommodated that observation by striking that language.
I don't think we're gonna, we would probably show, if there's 11 units here, the recording that we sent in, we show that there's 11 units that are occupied by this person A, B, C, and D. I don't know if we could get so far and put names in it, definitely would be social security numbers and so forth. I mean, because our original, during the application process, we have all that personal information, social security numbers, income, so forth, but obviously, we want to be, protected that information.
Yes.
Steph, a couple things that I kind of like to, as I looked through it and thought about it some on this. I think my favorite radio station here is WIFB, what's it for Beaufort, and I kind of like to flush that out a little bit if I could. First of all, your reputation and that of your company representations is well known in the area and the southeast, and it's nice to see somebody who is, financially capable and has experience in this market. Frankly, it's very nice for me to recognize the speed at which you've been able to communicate and negotiate and get documents back to us so that we, in a timely manner, could look at this because we made the request of you and you've been responding to that. I also am aware by looking at some of the materials that you build a good product, so we're gonna end up with new units. To me, I asked this question when we first started, that this product is intended for the rental market. And we need that. I took a liberty of rounding it out, 10% of the units comes out to, the number usually comes out to 11 units. I don't think that this town has had a financial commitment for, other than market rental, for 11 units in 45 years. So we are going to have some less than rental, they're gonna be new units. And that's gonna be a new product to Beaufort, and I think that's one of the things that I recognize in your proposal that's in it for Beaufort. There's some checklist things that we have become very aware of, you're not in 100-year floodplain. You are committing, in my mind, mathematically, virtually a $3 million investment in our town. I respect that, and I thank you for it. So I think there are a lot of things that at this level, looking at it and as you say, trying to check the box as to whether it will be able to supply public sewer. I'm hoping that we'll be able to approve that for you. There are some things that when you get the site plan, I'd like to, and I won't be here, so you won't have to look at my face. But there are some things when you come to it that I'd ask you to pay attention to. One is we've seen some units certainly that have narrower than optimum street widths. You're showing 24 feet. We're not discussing that today. That'll come at a later date. But we've seen some that, in my opinion, when you get any parking on the street, 24 feet probably is not acceptable. So there are some things from a technical standpoint, but we're not discussing that tonight. But I just mentioned that to you, looking forward to the future. And I think you've got the space to do it. It'll cost you a couple dollars in asphalt and grading, but I would urge you to look at it. And certainly your joint venture partner, the Blue Lewis Group, knows this community, knows that type of thing well, and knows what it takes. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for making a proposal to Beaufort.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
I will follow Commissioner Oliver. I know we're not talking about site plans today, but I did see in this agreement, you said amenities will include swimming pool, dog park, pickleball, mail, kiosk, green space, and sidewalks around the site for resident connectivity. All sounds great. Again, I would request sidewalks. And I'm not gonna say it much tonight, but what do we do, right? And I will be here, so you all can do my face.
Much better.
I would request that those sidewalks, go on both sides of the street and they're not directly adjacent to the street, you know, there's, I don't know what we call them here, but Ryan from calling them tree lawns. That there's some grass area between the sidewalk and the road, so that's, so another thing for you all to consider.
Yeah, we're working on several of these communities. This is one of our sort of new prototypes, getting away from just traditional 3 or 4 story flats and looking at, you know, more vertically developed projects like this. Horizontally developed projects like this. And of the 2 that we have on the ground right now, both have sidewalks on both ends. I mean, one of our big pet peeves is a lot of the competitive projects that we looked at. Their driveways were fairly short, and so, you know, it doesn't take a big truck to be essentially either into the sidewalk or out into the street. So we really try to get the depth, again, with the site constraints of each project is different. Our goal is always to provide more. We do, you know, take pride in trying to create a walkable and livable community here. It's funny you mentioned the pickleball. You know, you used to think that was just kind of a giveaway thing. Now we really have to think about where you put it, because as soon as it goes in, you have folks that do not want to be near it because of the all day and all night. So, you know, there's nothing new under the sun.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You think about the tic tac. don't you?
Yes.
Keep locating that back towards the bunkhouse to keep up.
Yes, that's what we should probably do, right? Any further questions? I have a few. Okay. Piggybacking on Commissioner Oliver and Commissioner Sweetwood, I thank you for bringing this forward and being able to come up with an agreement that has considered historic, but is a long time overdue. We should have been asking for these things from other developers, so thank you for being a pioneer in that particular effort. I also like the fact that you're going to be making this an inclusive community. All the fixtures will be the same with this workforce or market. And that you're gonna try to integrate neighbors, so this way you can get that good feel. I really appreciate that. So my little suggestions are probably, and housekeeping a little rudimentary. The first one is short-term rental. I know that you have in here that you're not gonna, you have between 6 to 8 months to rent, and most of your apartments will be yearly. Probably you're gonna have that. This, can we define short-term rental in this agreement without just letting it sit out there, being more definitive?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say just for what it's worth, we can't rent for anything less than, I believe, 30 days because of the occupancy tax, and so all of our leases are for longer than that. And again, you know, different municipalities, we have different conversations with folks about what those pains and stuff.
Just for me, just to be
And
clear.
and Mayor Walker, during the last session, but we're not in for the Airbnb program either. I mean, we're trying to create a community, have people live there for more than a year.
Great, that's great. The thank you for including that language, it's just a little cleanup for me. Also, we had talked about the rental of these units, especially for those that are considered workforce, the 11 units at 10%. And in our meeting, we spoke about if for whatever reason you couldn't find someone to fill those workforce housing, you would have the ability to rent it to market. But in that, I hope that we have at least 30 days for it to stay on the market, so that way we can make sure that we're giving an opportunity for individuals who are in that workforce arena. It gives us also the security that you're making that extra effort to go and find somebody, and if you can't, I understand that you don't wanna have a unit sit and stale. But it's something that too can be reported as well, making sure that.
Before you can answer that, he's got a real answer for you. I'll tell you 2 things. One, these units will lease immediately, as far as the workforce housing ones. When we deliver affordable housing, the need is so great that, I mean, it's unbelievable. And then 2, we're really blessed to have an affordable division, so we just knock on the door or on the wall, really, in his office to ask Justin Mills, who runs our affordable housing division, to ask, hey, specifically, how do you guys navigate? Because in their world, it's based on different hurdles, right? They have to have a certain amount for 30%, a certain amount for 60%, but they also don't want to sit there and hold a 30% unit for 2 years because you don't find someone that qualifies. So yeah, it's a try to bring that together.
Yes, ma'am, I'm not sure, and sure, busy ways.
It doesn't spell out to me.
Well, we
Exactly what says that, I'm more happy to take a look at it.
Yes, sir. We provided, after the past meeting we have this, next available unit policy.
Okay,
It's just a 1-page document
that outlines, how the procedure would be for holding the unit for 30 days. So we sent that in with the previous development agreement. So, and again, our affordable division is exactly what they use, as Thomas just outlined.
All right, so does that need to be attached to this agreement that we have?
Yes, ma'am. That would be it.
Okay, so that will be accepted, all right, and just for clarity, what was the number of days in which we were gonna hold it?
30
30 days, right, okay, very good. That's all I can. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Do you have, of those, units that you have, is it a percentage of those units that you're basically going to allow for low income? Or do you have a designated unit?
No designated units. I honestly wouldn't do that anyways, for a point, just the idea of integrating it. You don't want to create islands of isolated pockets for, the workforce housing. So no, it would be an exact same fit fixture as all of the other units. In fact, over the life of the project, every unit could technically have been rented by a market rate renter, market rate resident, or a workforce housing resident.
And have you had rental caps before, on these units?
We have not, no, that's not something that we've seen. We operate in Maryland some that's starting to become, but it's tough to make work for us.
But I mentioned last week, Spartanburg, South Carolina, we have a deal there that we're working, that we're providing 80% workforce housing for. But in that municipality, they're providing a tax abatement for the workforce housing.
And, have you had, you do compliance reporting, I guess, that we talked about, how often do you do that?
In Spartanburg County, it's the same, it's every twice a year, or whenever you ask, I mean, there's nothing that.
Yeah, it's all pulled directly off the management software, so it's not a tall ask. I mean, if Matt or whoever on staff requested it, it's something that can be done in minutes.
And one of the items, just the information I sent in earlier today, just so everybody, there's no confusion. Because we're using housing and urban development financing for it, and fair housing, et cetera, we're providing some ADA accessible units into the development, and that's where you see in that matrix, it shows ADA units. So there's some of the units that are set up for that. Those are single story units, so not two stories, so they would be on the end of a building, if you will. That would allow somebody in a wheelchair to be able to go in, or even vision impaired. We have requirements for that, to put in devices and so forth to accommodate that.
And you made the comment that these units will be rented as soon as they hit the market. Does that include even the other units that you?
Well,
have you done enough market research to understand the rental market here?
If anybody has, real insight into that, I'd love to hear. But no, we do our best, both an internal market study as well as a real property research group is one of the industry standards that does it. They have shown excess demand for housing, which I'm sure is no surprise to anyone. And we certainly don't expect the market rate units to rent as quickly as the workforce housing units, just because of the price and the number of them, but no, the expectation would be, usually about a 12-month lease up. This will be a phased delivery, so you'll be delivering units and leasing as you're building out the rest of the projects as well. So, in a perfect world, by the time the last building delivers, you're darn well leased up.
And like Mr. Commissioner Howard said, obviously, want to know what's in this for Beaufort. Looking at the rental prices that they have, they're fairly high compared to 2-bedroom, 2 baths in the community. Obviously, they don't have a garage, but they definitely, even at the 8% of the rents, they also kind of ride a little bit higher than some of the rentals that are in the community. So the concern is obviously, we are doing this and we are getting maybe a larger unit in a garage, but can the residents of the community really afford these units? And that's really the same price point is going to be huge here.
Yeah.
And if we don't have the right price point, I think we're going to be in trouble, and we're going to be flooding the market, not with just higher end rentals, but also higher end full price rentals. But if you look at even the full price rentals, we're going to be adding 100 units of full price rentals that currently are higher than market rates. So that's a concern.
Yeah, a couple of things, one of the as you're working in this industry for a long time, you start coming across sort of things that just pop up on every project, and one of the tiers, we by accident, sort of our market rate rents are right at where has 100% AMI rents, right? Not on purpose, right? We're not tracking what the federal government tells us what rent should be, but it just seems to line up in certain terms. Second part of your question, yeah, the area median income here works against affordability in a lot of ways, right? That's one of the paradoxes of call it a destination, like this, right? That you have high AMI, which leads to higher market rate rents, which then filters down to higher workforce housing rents. Look, we wouldn't be doing the project if we didn't think there were 90-ish folks in Carter County, both for profit, that could afford these, were willing to afford these units. The product type that we deliver is unlike anything else that has been constructed, is significantly larger than traditional flats. And so we usually expect about a 20% premium on our, actually I think it's about 18% premium on our townhomes versus flats, right? Because you have the garage, you have the larger square footage. And then, most of the competitive set is not amenitized. So we have an amenity set here that no one else can compete with. The final part of it is, look, if market rates, if we can't get the rates we need, we're the only ones that can make the decision to lower, right? There's no watchdog that says, hey, you have to keep your rents at 25.50 for a 3-bedroom. Sorry, I was talking to this. 22.95 for a 2-bedroom, right? If it's not leasing, and we have the ability to lower rents, it just lowers our return.
Well, that's kind of exactly the point I was trying to make, was that I think at 80%, I think you're high. If it's 50%, I think might be a better price point. In my opinion.
Yeah, I'll tell you, adding these 11 units on at the 80%, just based on what that does to our net operating income, and therefore our loan side, increases my investment by about $700,000 at the loan closing table, and about $1.8 million over the 15 years that we've asked for the deed restriction to be in place. All of that is up for conversation. I'm not saying any of that's set in stone, but I think it is worth noting that for kind of each dollar that comes out of income, there's, a corresponding investment that has to occur on the other end. And at some point that those two, conflict, right? And I think that's where, we can be forthcoming in what 70% want to do.
The market's gonna drive what, the price is for market, but ironically, if you go back, charts and the demographic information. Ironically, the 100% rents is basically market rate.
Right, but we understand, I understand what you're saying, and again, I think that's all up for conversation as we work through this. But there is the point of diminishing return for us that leads to. Right.
That's the driving in terms of your, even though you had calculated, 1.8%, 1% in terms of rent is based on 28516 zip code.
It's based, so they do it by, that's the zip code you put in, I think you can see it up there. When you type in that, it just pops up, Carter County is the MSA that it's in.
Okay, so we were just going over this draft agreement, just giving some feedback, but thank you very much. I don't believe it's going to be a decision made tonight. It's not the goal. But what is the goal as far as in the future? Are we going to take this out of session? Or maybe to revisit this at all, or do we have what direction we decided to play? So you want to take a look at this legally again?
Legally, yes, I think we've got a couple of edits, that the board has discussed, and if it's, the board's pleasure, I'm sure we could have a final version before the board at the workshop meeting, if that's the direction the board would like to go.
All right.
I see a couple of nodding heads at least.
That'll be perfect. That's just, fill out, turn around, attach. The amendment, which is page 67 for visibility applies to read to them and then. And then I'll come back to that.
Just state one more thing, I think it's fine for John, we do allow for subsidies to help qualify for the rent. So if there's somebody that's say making that makes 50,000 doesn't can't afford that unit, they can bring additional subsidies from the federal or state government, and that does allow them to qualify. That's just you're allowed to bathroom. That's correct. It's okay.
All right, so we'll revisit this at our work session, and thank you so much, I appreciate it very much. Now we're gonna move on to the USDA interim financing for the water system improvement project. That's present on that.
Just the email, I think, for holding some basic questions. So there's a very difficult conversation before us tonight, and the town is fully aware that we have 3 active USDA projects in the field, 1 being water, 1 being sewer, and 1 being stormwater. And unfortunately, we've had some serious concerns with the contractor who's handling our water portion of the project. And we've had to move from 1 contractor to our alternative bid to complete the project. And in the result of that situation, the first bid came in at approximately $6.9 million, and the contract was awarded at $6 million. And the alternative bid came in at plus $15 million, which leaves us in a per bid pricing situation in a deficit. So there's approximately 21,000 linear feet of water line that was intended to be installed by the primary contractor, which is Sunlight. Moving to TA Loving Company, who was the alternative bidder, allows us to complete the project, but there would be a deficit of approximately $6.5 million. The town board had encouraged staff to inquire with USDA, which we did. And we had the option to borrow an additional $6.5 million to complete the project as originally assigned. I won't say as it was originally bid, because it was a reduction in that first bid process that reduced it to roughly 21,000 million feet. Where we are tonight is the crossroads of a difficult conversation. I think it's fair to say that everybody from the community to this board would like to see the project complete. Unfortunately, we would have to borrow an additional $6.5 million to complete the entirety of the project with TA Loving or Tapper. When we ran these calculations, the estimated payment is approximately $292,000 for 40 years. That's the USDA's loan amortization period. And I want to be clear that the reason that this is a more difficult conversation is the current utility rate structure would not support an additional loan. But we know that the age of the infrastructure in the field, be it 50 to 70 or 80 years, is in need of replacement. If we were to stop the project and complete it with the current dollars that we have, there would be between 9,000 and 10,000 linear feet of the project that would be not so. And so, because we have this gap, we have to have a conversation to see, would you like to complete the project in the near 21,000 feet? And if so, we would borrow the $6.5 million, which would require us in the next 90 days to get on the LGC calendar, make a determination, and then move forward. All of these steps are critically time sensitive because the contracts that we have in place in the field will have limitations on anticipation notes or bans and then final funding. If we were to pursue the additional $6.5 million, this is also important for the public to be aware that the amount of time now you're literally handing a contract at a time from one contractor who didn't meet the obligation to a new contractor. The new contractor has shown us in the field they're very effective. This construction would then take place throughout the 2026 calendar. It's going to take another year. And the reason I tell you that is extremely important that we wouldn't have to make a payment June of 2026. But as this next budget cycle comes up, we would have to figure out how we would adjust rates to secure that near $300,000 a year from the rate payment to pay for those approved. If you were just a straight line divide that 292 by our 292,000 by our current customer base, it's about $7 a month. But the reality of this conversation is, will there be a better time to do the project? The answer to that is probably no. Will there be a lesser expensive option in the future? The realistic answer is probably no. Do we have a good contractor that can complete this work today? The answer is yes. And so if I were sitting in the audience, I'd be asking, well, Mr. Zapp, why is this contractor so much higher than the first contractor? My answer to you is because I think the second contractor bid appropriately with all the constraints in the field, with the age of the historic materials in the field, with all that they have from here. So I'm not here to cast blame on any particular vendor.
But if we were to sit here today and we're asking the question, should we move forward? Obviously, our answer, I think everyone would agree that we would like to have those pipes put in the ground. The difficulty is how will we pay for them? Can we afford to pay for them? So we have all the facts tonight, and I know it's a very heavy laden conversation. And so Christine, I will gladly try to answer any questions that arise from a financial perspective. But I'll pause again and say the practical, if we can afford it, is to obviously do the work. And so tonight is the difficult conversation. Should we move forward, yes or no? And the reason we're placing that conversation in such a black and white or clear combo is the USDA would like to know. Because if we can't use the $6.5 million today, there's obviously additional what we can, and they say on that. Knowing that unless something changed before we walked into the meeting or looked at the audience, we're still in a federal government shutdown, correct? So in our meantime, we've been here, we can't actually reach out to USDA, we can't speak to our colleagues because they're currently on federal shutdown. So we know that the second the light switch comes back on, they will be calling us and asking for that case. Not trying to make it dramatic, I'm trying to be very carte blanche about where we are today. I'll answer any questions that we can. If we don't, we'll get to those solutions.
This is a tough one. Mr. Steve, thank you, Matt. So this is a tough decision. So that extra 9,000 to 10,000 feet that we would need to borrow the 6.5 million for. If we don't fix that within the next year, what will happen to that? Well, over the next few years.
So there's a conversation of, do you pay that area or do you wait? And the Beaufort approach is to do all the underground work first. We already have water cuts in certain areas, we have sewer cuts in certain areas and stormwater cuts. So in this section of piping that wouldn't be installed, I would advocate that we patch only, because if you came back and did full edge paving, it would look pretty for a period. But the chances are the weight and the vibration of the asphalt machine will cause potential future leaks. So you'll have a new sanitary or line sewer line, new improvements of stormwater in certain areas where all these cross paths. And then if you came back and paved it and you didn't replace the water lines that are below, the practicality is it's not a question of if, but a matter of when they're gonna start to show themselves. So then the audience would be asking, well, then you just pay that, and then we're out there digging, making point repairs. So your direct answer to your question is hold off paving and do patching only in the area that's stranded, and then try to go back and find additional funds in the future to fix it, and then there'll be a delayed process.
Thank you.
It's a difficult decision because of the amount of money that the town has to put out for this. But I've seen firsthand water system failing and creating sinkholes and geysers and so forth in our streets. And that's not going to get any better. And I think as the road is open and open for repair, I think we have to just bite the bullet and make that decision to repair everything at once. Otherwise, we have to come back and, as Matt said, continue with patchwork time and time again. And in the end, we'll probably be spending more for this. So it's a difficult decision. It's a large amount of the spend, as you said. But I think for the town's future, it's the right decision.
So you said the first payment would be due until June?
I'm sorry.
2026.
So 2026.
It's a great question. If you don't mind, we have 3 payments that would theoretically be already due for June of 2026, which is this coming cycle. So if we finish the stormwater project, the USDA loan would be due in June. If we finish the water line project, the first payment would be due in June. If we finish the sanitary work, that would be due in June. The answer is complex because if we borrow down an additional 6.5 million, we're currently under the impression, and I want to caveat this, that we're currently under the impression that if we take the first USDA water loan and this new 6.5 and merge those into a single project, we could theoretically push off both first payment until June, in theory, of 2027. There's an option to potentially close this first water line project and make a payment in June of 2026. And then is the 6.5 million that you're borrowing a secondary loans to work. We don't have all those answers today. We believe that we were told prior to the shutdown that there's a high probability we could combine those loans. And our payment could be deferred. Is that accurate? One payment could potentially be deferred.
Yes, sir, that's my understanding, because they would resell all of the revenue bonds as one package, the current loan and if you move forward with the new additional.
I'm sorry for saying complex.
No problem. And the loan payment is what, 200,000?
There's a current water loan payment. Of 2x,
256,000.
and then the new payment would be approximately 292. So you have already committed and are prepared to expend $256,000 for the first portion of the water. What we're saying tonight is, are you able to absorb another $292,000 payment for borrowing an additional 6.5?
Or asking us if we can, or just in condition that we have it.
I can clearly tell you as your lead administrator that we do not have rates in position to pay the $292,000 payment. And basically what you're saying tonight is if we accept the 6.5 million, we will clearly be looking at rate adjustments for July 1 in this next budget cycle to make the following payment. But yes, sir, I'm not asking.
And thereafter.
You would have to raise rates to absorb this new $300,000 payment in the next budget cycle.
So Bucky, you answer that one and then say you will be here?
Yes. I think Matt and Christie have laid it out extremely clearly and with a lot of candor. And that is, we have, without even addressing all of our capital projects, because of someone default, we either have to not complete a lot of work or take on additional debt. And as Matt clearly has said, and we need to make in the record, we recognize if we do that, we're gonna have higher sewer rates or water and sewer rates, you can call them whatever you want, they're rates, effective in the next, in 2026 budget and 2027 budget, once they know exactly when the second payment starts. We're also helping that interim financing with an interim bank. And depending on when they ever come back to work, USDA says, there may be some capability of deferring that interest payment until you could roll it up into the USDA, but there's no way of knowing that until they get back to work. Now, as far as an opinion to the thing, I agree with staff that we have, none of us like this. But I agree with staff that their recommendation is accurate, that the reality of the matter and Christie pointed out in the letter that we had a month or so ago, that in 2027, we're gonna have to raise rates in order to meet our debt service coverage ratio. That's where we are. Does that answer your question, Mr. Christopher?
Sure, anywhere I want to be, but.
I know.
I know that's.
I know. I agree with you, I understand.
If we roll those two payments together, what does that do? Did they have different interest rates for those two loans?
They've offered virtually, yes.
Did I ask that correctly? Because wasn't the second one just a little bit higher in interest rate?
For USDA, yes, the 6.5 million was a higher interest rate than the original 8,031,000.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe we probably did, two of us can remember, but I believe the 8 million was at the poverty rate may have been 5 or 6 years ago assigned sub 2%, so approximately 1.8%.
That's right.
And that's tremendously low. That's why the $8 million loan payment is actually gonna be lower than the 6.5. Now, as far as rolled together, I think the deference of the payment. So I believe we would still have an amortization schedule on the 8 million and potentially an amortization schedule on the 6.5. We're working on that, trying to get that clarity.
but it's gonna be a higher interest rate.
That's correct.
It may be-
The 6.5 is a proposed
It
hike,
wasn't that much higher, but I think,
closer to 3%.
right, but do you think we're gonna find a lower interest rate than that in the future? If we waited and then, I know you paid our.
Yeah, I don't think so, but professionally, many things have happened in my career that I didn't anticipate, but
But I think that's also to that if we hold off and try to find the money later, as you said, we have to recognize that the interest, this is probably one of the best interest rates we're gonna get.
So it's potentially the lowest interest rate in our foreseeable future. And we've already pre-bid the work and they're holding the prices, which are substantially paid, which is surprising.
And you've also got. I think it's safe to say that you have a commitment from USDA, where that if we didn't, you don't know whether you'd have a commitment from USDA. They've been very direct on that.
Which is why we worked so hard to get the approval prior to October 1, which is the start of the new federal fiscal year. And the 6.5 million, to our knowledge, prior to the shutdown, is embargoed now to the side.
And then it closed.
Yes, so we're going off the best intel we have. We assume that that will continue forward if the federal government is then provided a new budget and moves forward.
So do you have to do interim financing for the 6.5 as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it would take, the great question, take us over a year to complete that level of work.
And that's virtually a known thing, because you have a known takeout. As long as you have a known takeout, the banks can lend you.
So with the shutdown, which we don't know when it's gonna end, but how you do need for us to make a decision so that you can give an answer as soon as the government is open again.
Yes, sir, and the fact that the state of North Carolina is open, they have a very limited schedule, so we would need to get on the LGC agenda before the close of 2025. So I think we're targeting to get on the LGC agenda as early as December, if possible.
All right, and we also need to advertise for that interim financing. And have that in place, I believe, before there's time to do that, but all that has to happen before you're on.
There's a sequential steps that we must follow, even though the federal government is on hiatus in anticipation that it will turn back on. And then we would be through the process to be on the LGC agenda by December. And this is not some sort of a governmental speaker, it's just the steps that we're trying to follow.
And this is, has to go with the LGC too.
This next one is.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the agenda item I've written in the packet? Says that would be additional 6.5 million over 40 years.
Yes, ma'am, all your USDA loans are amortized over
Okay.
80 years.
Just want to make sure.
That is accurate,
Thanks.
I think it's 3.5%.
it's just 1 for 3.
Yeah, first USC was 20 years as well.
Now, we do need to point out there's good news here. This entire board has done a tremendous and heavy lift to receive multiple millions of dollars in actual grant funding in their current project. So the town of Beaufort has really done its homework to try to position the community to improve the utilities, to seek as many grant dollars as were available. So we can still celebrate that, but the reality of the conversation is costs are increasing. We have a very difficult road ahead with our individual contractor getting complete and get out of the project. And there's still a lot of very good work that has been done and is being done on a daily basis. So the problem is the amount of work and the speed at which the primary contractor did the work is not acceptable.
Now, if the board did approve this next step, when would TA Levy be assigned the opportunity to go into construction to do the work on?
TA loan is on immediate standby. TA loan is we're all aware, is also our sewer portion of the project. They've completed almost they were at the last throes of their sewer work, which resulted in the work that on Turner Street that had to begin in early October. So TA loan is literally on immediate standby, doing all the other work they can. That if they are green lighted, they've already started the primary portion of the project, So they are working through that handoff is currently underway. So TA is doing all the water and sewer work that is on Turner Street. And that once they complete that, if they run out of funding on the initial $6 million, they should be done and out of Beaufort by May. If we procure the extra 6.5, get the LGC approval, then they would continue to work that would run them through the balance of 2026 and into 2027. So to answer your question as simply as I can, TA Loving is going to be in Beaufort regardless, doing water line work through at least May of 2026. If we pull down these additional funds and want the balance of the project complete, it will take them another year to propose to us, which means it may be May of 2027. It's a tremendous amount of underground work.
Question I have is that that Broad Street right out here can be paved.
That's a very good question. Paving occurred today, patching occurred today on Queen Street. The bigger conversation is the town of Beaufort had a $25 million plan that included water, sewer, and stormwater. And only patching of those sections. The plan did not include edge-to-edge paving. And there was a conversation from the engineering team in advance of the initial 3 projects that up to an additional $10 million is needed to repave those roads that have been impacted. So we can come back and patch Broad, but the board clearly told us that we're working towards edge-to-edge paving. For that to happen, the immediate need is $2.3 to $2.5 million to perform edge-to-edge paving. So that's why we were looking at the inventory of our current properties, trying to determine if there's additional funds that we can liquidate and match that. There's also the larger question that if there's $6 to $8 million more of asphalt needed, we would have to figure out a way to fund that. So, and that's a great point, that it's not traditionally through debt, because if you borrow money to pave roads, your only access to repayment on that currently are Powell bill funds, which are plus or minus $180,000 a year. You would have to have a conversation of, are we going to look at a 1 or a 2 or whatever penny tax adjustment or specific dedicated to asphalt replacement.
Which doesn't necessarily have to be a question answered to that.
Well, I hope that some of the emails that I have received from residents of Broad Street is on tonight and hearing that we're doing our best.
Yes, sir. We had planned on coming through Broad as early as May. We were told in a board meeting they were coming down Broad Street and we had to halt that paving due to the holdup of the water. And so the water lines had to be installed, had to be cross-connected, and then had to be bacterial tested. And for all that to happen, it's taken us all the way through October. In our last projects meeting, the USDA water lines were connected and there was night work occurring to do those connections. And we are at the very final stages of last week. We also had Lennoxville closed. We had Lennoxville closed, Turner Street adapted, and then the roundabout started all at the same time. But the reason that those projects were sequentially stacked is the phasing of the time for water, sewer, storm. So we're now to the point where we can talk about getting some asphalt on Broad Street, and our goal was try to complete that section of asphalt before the end of this calendar year.
Testing is probably the patient had.
I want to be really transparent and specific. The other issue is Sunland has not issued a contract to an asphalt paving sub. We keep requesting that. Everyone is waiting. And the reality is, if I'm not mistaken, as of my last report, which was 5:15 p.m. today, Sunland's making the asphalt patches of its current water line work in-house and not utilizing an outside paving company. And we're going to test those results on Queen Street that were late today. We're looking at all. for quality assurance, factual completion, action ratios.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions?
Mayor. I make a motion to approve the additional USDA debt of $6.5 million as described tonight.
Second.
All right, that a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, have the same right. Ayes, carried. Thank you so much.
And we will make a commitment to the board and to the public as we proceed with our process around LGC, our indebtedness, and we will do everything in our power to keep you updated along that process. And we will make sure that you're speed as fast as you can.
Thank you. Now we move on to the Crystal Coast Veteran Day Parade request for 2025 contribution. At our work session, we have Mr. Pete Benton come to present to us about the activities that are going to be occurring at this year's Veterans Day Parade. At that point in time, I thought maybe he would make a request that he has been making to other municipalities for a donation for the parade. He called me a week later after the work session and asked if both would be interested in making a contribution. I asked Matt to inquire about other municipalities and what they may have contributed to this parade. And what he has found out is that Pine Shores has contributed $2,000. Atlantic Beach, 2,500. Emerald Isle, 2,500. And Warren Head City will be working in kind with their law enforcement officers, public street services. There's no cash, everything's all in kind. And I understand that this is an extremely big and very long parade. It's been considered the longest parade in the state of North Carolina, and I don't believe that title has been taken from them yet. So the question to the commissioners, and I know we've had a policy in the past about making contributions and donations, but I just present in front of you the request from the Veterans Day Parade folks, that would be that if you're interested in entertaining a contribution for this year's parade. So I'm open for any discussions. Yes, Commissioner there, or Commissioner.
Did they give an updated budget? So I know when they brought it last time, it was not updated.
There was no updated budget, and I think you've actually made the point on that particular budget that the contribution that is supposed to come in as sort of updated prior to that. But no, there's no updated budget for that.
And I seem to remember when they presented the budget, a large part of it was for the outside one for sure not coming this year. So, right, and staff, so just curious what the contributions are going towards this year.
I think in light of our conversation about the debt service and the fact that we're revenue neutral this year, we've had to make some hard decisions centered around that. Given that their expense lines and their budget are pretty hefty for some things that were kind of commemorative gifts and things like that. The most expensive things that they were going to contract, like Commissioner Spiegler's that are not coming this year. I would like to not donate anything towards the parade. That's not, I don't wanna be disrespectful to our veterans because I enjoy this parade. I think that it's an asset to the county, but also I think we're in a tight spot right now. And not every municipality has donated, so we wouldn't be alone. I think we're in a tight circumstance right now, and I think we need to be pretty conservative.
Sure. My concern too, we have parades in Beaufort and the BDA and the high school and so forth, put on parades, and our community does not usually give donation to those parades. So I feel like it just sets a bad precedent for, if we're not even supporting our community members, the people who are here, putting on the, Beaufort Fourth of July parade and the Christmas parade and the homecoming parade. To do this, I think it's just, we don't really have a policy towards, gift giving. I'm not even sure if this is a 501c3 nonprofit, but it's just kind of difficult to to want to start that and set that precedent. No disregard to the Veterans Day parade, I think that's fantastic. Yeah, I think, raising, those resources from, businesses in the community is for a lot of these other parades has been the way to go. But to use the taxpayer money toward that, I kind of have some difficulty with that.
Well, yeah, well, as a veteran, but at the same time, I do have a responsibility to the town of Beaufort, and right now we're cash strapped. And I would love for us to be able to go around that, but we can't, it's just not affordable, and like I said, we have not done it in the past. Or even for the town, or both for the Christmas, 4th of July, on Cook, etc. So I like to say I know on it.
Considering there's consensus not to do that, would you like me to take a vote, or can I just leave this by consensus?
Not taking action is the same as a no vote, so.
Okay. All right, based on what I'm hearing, I will contact Mr. Benton to let him know that the town of Beaufort appreciates the Veterans Day parade, but there are circumstances this year it's not going to be optimal for us to consider a contribution. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the new business. We have F3 Marina Drive. There's that.
I can't read it. Your name's coming.
And so Matt, you will introduce the individuals who are want to join us.
Thank you, Mayor. We should have with us, we're gonna do a test here, we should have our Spitzler and Lauren Heanna, we can see if you hear us okay with the thumbs up or hand wave. One. There's something, all right, excellent. So we have two of our team members from F3 joining us here live, this evening, and what we've just handed out to the board. We had a budget presentation email that went out earlier to clarify some questions that we received from our team members, our elected officials, from the distribution of our council packet of midweek last week and one-on-one conversations over the course of the weekend leading into today. There was also a request of our offices to determine how much money is available for spending in our waterfront improvement project. And that's our Fund 69. We want to identify that, let the town council know as well as our residents that there's $226,096 currently available in our capital improvement fund of the water improvement project, Fund 69. Then most importantly, what we have here tonight is a simple 3-page document, 2 pages being in the draft Excel spreadsheet, and then we also have included for you our identified map. So you should have a map in your handout packet tonight that shows you our yellow highlighted areas and the assumptions that we're working off of our draft F3 budget. But before we begin, I want to say that worked extremely closely with town staff on this. We want to thank our BWOC members, and this is just a very high level. This plane is still at 100,000 feet. I believe we plan to bring any of these documents to our BWOC team members and seek their input on Thursday, which we're going to be doing this coming week beginning at 1 o'clock. So this is just very, very high level. So what we've all done here, work together and have Lori and Hunter here to answer any specific deep dive backup questions I can answer and Christy can answer from down. So what we're proposing is that the town of Beaufort is in a position to take over effective January 1st, 2026. And our fiscal year then would run through June 30th. So we have a reflective 6-month period budget. We also know that we're looking forward to a whole year because the invisible line of July 1st really isn't applicable to anybody except for us. that your season would start usually in early spring, and your season would run through this time of year, and so there's a lot of moving parts here, so we wanna stress that we're focused on a 6-month run. Where we take over control January 1st through June 30th of 2026. The overarching general large numbers would be a potential gross total income of approximately $1,824,000. That there would be a potential for a net operating income of $213,000 in that first 6 months. And then if we have payouts for what we would call initial CapEx, which would be setting up a more robust Wi-Fi, we've estimated at $10,000, and that's for the marina customers. It would be building our landing page and website, which would be modernizing some of the current advertising techniques that the Boca Town docs are familiar to. That website is listed at $10,000. We've also encompassed in this budget that we would be estimating that our contribution locally for dredging is around the rate of $100,000 a year, so we're accounting for $50,000 or 50% of the dredging dollars. And then debt service, this is key because we had the conversation of that leading into this, that we plan on building out a town-owned fuel farm that's also effective January 1st, that will take upwards of 90 days. And borrowing at $1.2 million is going to require a payment, an estimated annual payment of $286,000. So in the first 6 months, our leadership and finance team determined you have to pull down 50% of your payment in the first 6 months. So that's also listed at $143,000, leaving us a proposed net income while we're in control of the first 6 months of approximately $88,000. Now, I'd like to point out that these numbers include estimates for everything. The consumption of water and sewer, which we have access to, electric, which we don't have access to. That it also includes items such as the pro forma of the tiered system on the dock and transient, and these assumptions are extremely important, that we assume a 30% occupancy. We want to set something that's manageable and achievable. We don't want to hit the stars and shoot for the stars and not be able to hit them. So our basic budget assumptions are 30% occupancy rate, and F3 Marina can provide greater detail on estimated costs. They've gone through this with a fine tooth comb. They're basing it off of other marinas that they have in their inventory. We've worked through the salaries, we've worked through the number of hours, so you have all this data that was provided to you, but again, even down to insurance, we have estimated high, and we received another quote today. I think I sent it out to you, maybe as early as 3:30 today, but this team, our leadership finance team, have options on insurance. So if we could get clarification from the board tonight on certain desires of how you want to insure the property, how you would like to handle commercial rental fees, we can very much tighten in or hone in on this budget, but we started with very high level assumption. So I'll stop speaking and I'll let you ask any questions, and then we have a series of questions that if we could get answers to will help us refine it.
Who would like to ask questions first of Matt? And Commissioner Gilpin.
Matt, I know that you had the BWOS estimate that Vic Pasolino presented, months ago. Was that kind of used as a base or checkpoint for this?
Yes, ma'am, because the majority of the revenues that are going to be utilized in this come from the hard work that the BWOS team put together. Your number one driver is the number of total gallons of fuel sold. And F3's calculations, we know that we're not going to receive any sales in January, February, March. So yes, ma'am, we use that data and try to estimate the total number of gallons sold. And in this opportunity, you have a raw number. For example, you're going to buy wholesale that fuel, and then you're going to resell it. The calculated upcharge is $1 per gallon. So if you bought 700,000 gallons and resold it at $1 above, you have a potential capture of potentially $700,000 in revenue. Yes, ma'am.
If any.
Now, you had a section on commercial rents for tenant-based rent, additional rent, speculative rent. What do you call an speculative rent and additional rent? What is that there? There's really not much listed there, but what are you anticipating? In this section?
We have backup sheets at each of these data points, but and I'll try to answer Dr. Pickle's question. You have what we know as potential commercial rent today. In our map, if you'll reference your map that you have in front of you. Commercial rentals are currently positioned in the basin east, closest to town hall, and if anybody's familiar, you have the Crystal Coast Lady and the pirate ship. That's basically your easterly boundary of this F3 area. So we would need to derive a rental for the Aswans, we would need to derive rental for all of the other commercial operators that are on your map. Listed in spaces 58 through 67, and then Crystal Coast Lady space 68, and the pirate ship space 69. So we have an estimation of what those could potentially be, but we're looking for guidance from the board. Do you want to maintain what they're currently paying? Would you like to look at a market adjustment? Would you like to base it off of lineal feet? So we're just looking for clarification in that area to answer that question a little bit deeper. And we're under the assumption that the town would like to maintain those commercial leases, and that the town would remain, the rest of that area is for transient boat traffic as well as local boat traffic, which we do have carve outs for local boaters on an opportunity to come and tile for free for up to that 3-hour window, then pursue and spend the dollars downtown and get back in the boat.
Just as a reminder, Matt, the current operator, they rent by the linear feet, or do they do market or both?
So we believe that they have individualized, non-binding handshake agreements to be very transparent and specific. Yes, ma'am. Each person has a uniquely different lease agreement based on, I think, the time that they came in and what they provide, and whether or not they maintain the dock or the dock is maintained by the current leaseor. So there's some conversational points that we could work through to determine how to do it.
Has that free been able to suggest current market rates for those?
We did anticipate that question, so I believe F3 has comparables, but right now we're looking for the council's guidance to put those dollars and cents together. And I'll pause that for either Lori, for Hunter, if I've spoken out of turn. You have the availability to provide potential fair market analysis based on other areas, correct?
We do. We've looked at 13 other properties. We've done a market study, and we have recommendations that we'll make. My understanding was that this first 6 months we would just try to come in and not make a lot of changes initially to pricing until everyone was comfortable with what we were doing.
That's fair, because I would ask that very question. What was their suggestion? And so, since John already asked that question, I would like to extend it out to either Paul or Sarah. And in terms of in you guys' meeting, did you guys look at a price rate for commercial boating?
We have not, and I think, and Commissioner, you can weigh in too, I think we would be comfortable with the suggestion of, for the first 6 months, keeping it where it is and having time to complete those types of studies and have a discussion on, you know, how the rates would change for the commercial operators.
When you say keep it as zero, do we know what it, we don't know what it is now?
We have
Because the Able has not shared that information.
That is correct. So there's a couple of approaches here. Just being very upfront with you, you could consider 2026 as a building year, and you could potentially try to hold the numbers the same for 2026. I'm not speaking on behalf of any commercial operator, but I think it would be a little bit more difficult to make a rate change July 1 mid-season for them. So these are conversations you're going to want to start now and make anticipated changes from all of 2026, or potentially consider leaving or negotiating some sort of a consistent rate for 26 and then revisiting new rates for 27. But we're open to whatever the board's pleasure.
And it seems that we have a couple months to be able to figure this out, and you know, given the fact that the docks require repair or even quite a bit of expense from the town, we think we would want to move toward market rates. as quickly as possible so that we can capture revenue, and then put that into the docks. That way, the vendors have the opportunity to revisit to the rates, and I think fair market is fair market. I think it be good to the town, good to the community. I think the concern is, if so, then we're subsidizing this downtown, especially the repairs. I was gonna ask about the dock house, the dock masters quarters. I didn't see anything on there about repairs or renovations or anything like that to that facility. Has that been evaluated? Have you looked into that? Because
It's access.
yeah,
So great question. Just a two-parter, basically stating a question, if I heard you correctly. I'll start with the second half, which is the question. Have you done the walkthrough assessment of the dock house? The direct answer to that is no, we don't have access to that yet. We're being very respectful of the current leaseholders' ability to manage their business. The second piece is, we were privy to a weird meeting today, and the one thing that is really needs to be on our radar is we've met with Spectrum, which is the current provider for the telephone and internet to the dock house. We may have some opportunities to upgrade speeds, capacities without major costs, which we've all talked through. The other piece is we need to make a considerable decision on how electric is allocated and paid for. Because some of the commercial leaseholders do not pay electric bundled in as a part of their lease payment. So you're now talking about, we need to do a full Duke meter assessment. We are currently, we know how many water meters we have, so we're plotting that. And there's just a lot of unknowns that we legally potentially have to hold off on. But the good news is, by partnering with F3 Marina, they have been in multiple of these conversions, and 60 days lead time for them is, in their words, not mine, a much better ramp up than some of the other short-term conversions that they include. So we believe that as the contract goes into effect on November 1st, we'll have a greater opportunity in that 60-day period before the close of the year and answer any other questions you do have. But again, we will need access beginning January 1st to get into the dock message office and consider those prior issues. Which will give us a period of time to do that while we're doing a few format stuff.
And I understand you want to respect property, that he presently in terms of the dock house, but can we not get him to understand that we just want to just come in and make a quick assessment of what we may have to do or not do?
I'm not sure what our legal access is to that space today with the current piece. I'm not putting our attorney on notice, but we have to, we can only walk where we can walk, and I'm not sure what that status is. Now, we have an extremely friendly relationship with Mr. Weeks today, the current operating team. We're stopping in, we're working through problems that are arising, and I want to be very candid that it's a great relationship today. And they've been very forthcoming and helpful, from Mr. Weeks to the current team members that are managing them.
So to move the conversation on about rentals, you say you have 3 recommendations. Did we hear those tonight?
No, ma'am. Where we are today is answering the questions of, would Beaufort like to do 12-month leases? If it's a 12-month lease, that helps us with our amortization of the leases. Should each rental be set according to their current pricing or their F3's market analysis of the 13 sites that they've looked at? Is there an alternative approach that the board would prefer us in F3 to take? And then once we can determine that, we'll come back to you in 2 weeks with a much better and clearer plan, but we do seek your input here this evening.
Yes, Commissioner Middleton?
I would like to keep the commercial rates, the same for the 6 months and consider adding the electric. Separate that out, not package it. To Commissioner LaPagla's point about achieving market rate as soon as possible, I also want to be really sensitive to those businesses down there, those small businesses down there. We've had a lot of residents that have had to move out of our town because they can't afford housing. And I don't want to see some of those small business owners have to pack up when they've been there for so long, so I think we should try to be respectful of that. I wonder if there's any type of communication or engagement or outreach that the town and or F3 can have with the commercial operators when we get going, because we don't want to just slam them with this. we wanna let them know it's coming, and we wanna let them voice their concerns and what they see, as fair. And I think that would be a reasonable approach.
So, on your first point about bundling and unbundling electric, I want to advise that may not be a possibility based on how the meter is set up.
Gotcha.
So we want to be very clear for everyone in the space that traditionally as a tenant, you pay a lease and then the utilities are your responsibility. I believe that where the water meters and some of the connection points are and the electric meters, it may not be possible for us to segregate or separate. There may be two leaseholders utilizing the same electric meter, so we hear you, but we'll come back with more factual data when we have.
Okay, and so we need those 6 months to, settle those metering issues, just so we can use that to settle those issues. If it's easily settled, then separate it out.
Now, I want to speak as a former director of a municipal electric system. If you were saying that to me and we managed our own electric system, I could say to you confidently, yes, man, we could sort that out in 6 months. With Duke Energy Progress, they're very responsive to us, but I'm not sure their workload would allow us to resolve those issues in 6 months.
I agree with Mr. Gilpin, although I'll say, I think based on what Matt just said, that July 1st cutoff, that makes sense for us for town business, but again, that's right in the middle of their season, so maybe it makes sense to take the whole first calendar year, keep the rates the same, and then everybody starting January 1, 2027, that's what makes sense for a lot of things.
Yeah, I think.
I just think we're really forgetting quite a bit of money, and some of these rates here are like. You could not find a West in our community for these rates. They seem to be 10 years old or. They're just way below combined with our market rates. So like I said, I think we're subsidizing and at a point where our community, we're trying to save money and trying to basically, raise taxes and raise on things. And yet, doing this, really, this does really benefit our taxpayer. I think market rates are market rates. It's been great that I have these low rents for so long, but I think we should rip off the band-aid and start and look at and lean on that free. I mean, we hire this company to lead the community and give them their recommendations. I think it'd be great to hear from them, but then it's that advice to them. From the docs, and like repent. That's fine. Okay.
Mr.
A couple of things, some are questions, some are just comments from experience, if I could, Matt. Overall, I would suggest that to the extent possible, that this exercise be led by F3. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, which I'm going to address more specifically, there's a lot of this that requires extreme flexibility and change of prices based on circumstances. Now, that include weather, include capacity, include a number of things. And frankly, to some extent, I'd like to give you the opportunity of not having to be directly responsible for each one of these decisions. So I'm kind of trying to cover your ass to a certain extent and drive this to F3. In addition, I will share with you from personal experience that this required a tremendous amount of attention and a lot of the authority of this really needs to happen by F3 at the dock with the manager. For instance, there's been a number of circumstances where as a boat would approach, what you charge them that night might be affected by how many gallons of fuel they're going to buy. For instance, if a boat's going to come up and buy a couple thousand gallons of fuel from you, you might give them the overnight fee. Because chances are you're going to be communicating by phone from their cell phone from a captain who's bringing the boat here. And I would urge us to the greatest extent to rely on the person who's got the greatest experience and the greatest exposure. That's F3. I will share with you personal experience that I've had with Haywood. I know that's how he does it. I know there was a lot of discussion going back and forth And frankly, sometimes it looks easier than it actually is. So for that reason, I would urge you to give the greatest authority to the one who has the greatest experience, primary contact, and have the authority to do it. These are in no particular order other than a factory out in Homestead. I am presuming that the monthly report that the commissioners receive at the work session will include monthly input from this report. Am I correct in that theory? So that in the February work session, the January report from the concessionaire F3 will be included in each report. Is that a true statement?
We believe that to be a fact, yes, sir. So what he's saying, to reframe it, is if you have a January 30th period of time, Lori and Hunter, that you would be able to deliver that within 15 days into the next month or 20 days into the next month. Is that accurate?
Yes, we have properties that are 15 to 20 days out. And so however we have it set up in your agreement is when we'll have all the financials to you.
Yes, sir.
Did you say yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yes.
The next question I think is there's a report in here about the property taxes on 611 in here, notwithstanding the fact that I don't think we necessarily may owe taxes. I don't think that the property taxes on 611 Front Street should be accounted for in this particular report of the docks. It's subject to a lot of different questions, et cetera, but that's just my recommendation is that the $8,000 is currently reported in here, which I know you haven't had a chance to find out if it's proper or it's due or not. I would just recommend that in addition to that, the 611 property, in my opinion, should not be part of this report. I will share with you that looking at it from an experience standpoint, I'm worried about the cash. We've got a $860,000 fuel project and $125,000 going into the parking lot. We have an inventory demand for fuel that will have to be filled in April for $60,000. And we've got $226,000 in this enterprise fund cash. I would ask staff to seriously think about that and to be extraordinarily candid backing the board to have enough reserves because we don't have any contingency funding. And I would just look and think about a cash reserve in this fund because I'm a little concerned that we have an adequate cash reserve. Also, on your debt, I think you could also make a case that you're probably not gonna turn this over to term payments until at least April, when the project is done and you close it out and you start your P&I payments. So I think during the first months of this, you probably should account for the interest on the money that we've already gotten, but you also have it invested. So the net arbitrage, I think you could lower the half interest thing for the year because I don't think your payments are gonna start until at least April.
I think our first payment is due August. Our first payment in full is due.
Okay, so
So
again,
we should owe 286 in August.
I would just tie it in, oh, so it's an annual payment?
That's true.
Okay.
I believe so. Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I just would look at that line, cash on cash.
Right, that.
I've talked about the fuel inventory. And the cash available, the 226. When you come back to the questions you asked about the commercial rates, again, that's really, my suggestion there is you really rely on F3 for that input. I will share with you that from my experience in our operation, I have found the best yield to be a 30-day renewable contract. If you do it on a 12-month basis, frankly, you have to discount too much to make that. And if you do it, you're not gonna get the daily rate because that's gonna be probably a premium. I at least found from my experience that, and I will share that I've seen some other marinas in this area, the highest yield is to use a 30-day monthly lease. That also gives you the flexibility of only having a 30-day commitment on there. It gives you more flexibility, but the highest yield on an annualized basis, comes out of those 10, has been my experience. And again, I really hope that you don't have to manage the docks the way you are today. I hope frankly, that the rate setting frankly gets driven down to the sub and not be set at this board, because we are the least experienced, the least capable of setting rates. And you are almost as bad as we are, but not quite. But the one who has the greatest experience is F3, and they're driven the same way we are. And that is, you want to get market rates, you want to get that thing, because their compensation is paid on that, and that I think would have a positive effect on the overall thing. I am in favor of binding the insurance on the docks for their loss. Frankly, because we can't afford the loss for that. Right now, I don't think we have much choice. I've self-insured docks and gotten lucky. Right now, I don't think as a town that we have I don't think that's our business. I think we have to play it safe for a while, especially until we build some reserves. I'll look over this and see if I have any other questions, but I think that's, I do give detail. I like the detail. I think the detail is good. I presume these account numbers are F3s. And I commend them for the detail and the candor in putting this spreadsheet together. I was able to follow line by line. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I've got one other question. And I've asked this in the past. Moffitt and Nichols did put out a study for us about the docks and so forth, and the longevity of the docks, and it was a 5-year. They had a 5-year lifespan. I think I was back, and we're coming up only 2 more years left of that lifespan. I didn't see any here professional fees for the reassessment from Moffitt and Nichols to see where we're at on that. And you feel that the $25,000 for repair of the docks is out that it's beyond me. I don't know if that's for you, but lean on them for understanding, floating docks, piers, so forth, what type of expense that would take, especially if we're not really sure where we're at with that cost.
So I can answer a couple of those pieces. We have asked Andrew TD York for an updated cost analysis of full 100% replacement of our floating dock system, so that's in process. In advance of the step 3 budget, we've already updated that Moffitt and Nichols study. We had those numbers back and we received them on Friday, October 3rd, I believe it was. And so we've already used those because we were utilizing and leveraging that study that Dr. LaPico references for our hazard mitigation grant program application. We originally thought we were going to be able to apply for $3.85 million on October 6th, but we had to pick a path. You either had to have a shovel-ready project by December, which meant that you had to spend $500,000 in engineering between today and December 31st, or you would apply for advanced assistance, which would provide us the potential grant funding for the design. We, as staff, made the decision to apply in a secondary process, which is the December process. So we utilized the Moffitt and Nichols updated study, and then we're going to internally, we're working with Ardura as well as our internal staff to get that grant application in for advanced assistance.
And I'd also agree, I think the budget doesn't show it, but I would also agree to add that extra $100,000 for insurance. Because I don't think the town should self-insure, especially with putting fuel tanks out there. And then if we were to have a catastrophic storm here that would wipe out docks, coming up with money and funds to then replace would be extremely difficult.
It's currently
allowed for $2.5 million.
It's currently in this budget.
Is it?
It's currently in the budget, but that's a clarifying point for you that there's, right now, we've got lowered to potentially $100,000.
It's in here at 135.
But there's another piece too, please. I'm not trying to cover you. We need clarification on business loss coverage.
Right.
Business loss coverage is 54 to 55,000. Even our insurance agent, when we're having these conversations, is indicating that we may not want to engage in business loss. There would be a rapid rebuild, and so you either gonna guarantee a loss annually of 54 to 55,000, or assume that the town would aggressively rebuild it back open. And so professionally, we've looked at all the numbers. I would advocate that the town does all of this this necessary minimum standards on general liability, causality. We look at all of that. So those numbers are in the budget, and then as two of our commissioners indicated, our first estimate was upwards of 135,000 for dock coverage. We believe right now our best and lowest estimate is 99,793. That's for $2.5 million of what we would call catastrophic damage coverage, hurricanes, natural disasters, things like that. But I want to point out that, carrying on Dr. Piccolo's point, they base what they pay you on of actual cash value, which is the service life of the docks. So our agent said, even though you're going to procure $2.5 million of coverage, you want to be very clear that when they physically come and assess the docks, they're not necessarily going to pen us a check for 2.5 million. It will be on the actual cash value or the physicality of the existing dock, and that's really important. But if you were to ask me professionally, are we in the best possible position to insure ourselves or to seek this $100,000 policy? I would say to you, it makes good business sense to buy a $100,000 policy. If you were to ask me the second follow-up based on my engagement with each of the individual agents that I've met with, should we look at business loss coverage? That's an extra $50,000 annual plus. I believe we're in a position to stand the docks back up swiftly, and I would advocate to pay the $100,000 for dock protection, but not to engage in an additional $54,000 to $55,000 for business loss or business. So I would like as an agent too, so I'll hand out cards after this event, because it's been a very rapid, as you indicated, very rapid learning pace. And so some of the information we have is accessible to us, but some of it isn't. And so right now we're looking at, when are you overinsured or when are you adequately insured? We want to be adequately insured in the event that somebody has a trip and fall hazard, and putting that $10 million bumper chute, or what we would call that additional rider, is extremely good business. That bumper chute to take us to 10 million is only a $20,000 annual investment, and that is very logical, good investment. So we would want clarification on hearing some general consensus from two, but if we hear from the balance of the board that you want us to include insuring of the dock itself, we would like to get that clarifying point. And then secondarily, are you interested in business interruption service? That's a yes or no, and then we either include it or not.
So you get the actual cash value, but not the full replacement cost.
You would get an actual cash value based on the inspection of the system itself.
So there could be a delta there, which we would have.
Potentially very large delta. And the reality is,
where you are in your ownership cycle, pay equates to that.
and in your ownership cycle, if you were in 0 to 15 years, you would tend to get to 2.5 million. And that's what everyone has indicated to us right. So we know that there's an aggressive plan for the town of Beaufort to seek funding and make improvements to the entire marine dock system as swiftly as possible, whether that be a grant application, North Carolina general statute allocation. There's all these choices that we have. So where we are today is in fourth quarter 2025, we believe that the most appropriate approach is to apply for the hazard mitigation grant program design assistance and see if we can get that funded. Design a plan in 26 and continue to seek funding as swiftly as possible.
Commissioner Cooper, did you have?
Yeah, I go back and address the, that real estate 8,621. Yeah. Is that not ours?
I don't have an answer because you referenced 611, but 611 in Front Street is the Stevens property. And I don't see how that's connected to this at all, but the reality would be, if we're looking at the dock house, and if we have to pay taxes on our portion inside the dock house, that would be a legal / accounting question.
Yeah, 611 shows on your report.
That's what I'm saying, 611 is 611 is the Stevens property, it's not.
I know, that's my question.
That's what I'm saying to you, I don't know why, it could have been an erroneous address.
So we agree.
Yes, sir. We agree we're both lost.
Yeah,
Can you speak to?
there should should not be any real estate taxes due on city-owned property, whether it's, Stevens property or the docks themselves. We've got an exemption.
And I think the question was if you leased it to somebody else for a profitable situation, whether or not they pay taxes, and that's. So you're basically contracting to it.
And the answer to that is no, the exemption is based on the ownership and not the use, so that line could probably come out if
Absolutely.
we find it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, there's nothing out there for, currently today, no, and that's a good point. What we have is the opportunity to use recycled vehicles for courtesy cars, and we should theoretically put something in there for generalized maintenance and not fuel it. We have leftover police vehicles that are currently being detailed in public works that we would utilize for the courtesy.
There would be something that.
We should, yes, sir. But I think what you just saw in your $8,000 of property tax would probably be better allocated to P&M of courtesy.
So now let's go back to the first question of these, the rental fees. Okay, so we're moving over to that here. We've got some first commercial rentals staying the same. And we've got one who would like to see that three take the lead on making those rate suggestions and the agreement.
I would agree with that.
Okay. And then I don't know where you stand, but if you're commercial, or would you like to do market, or would you like to do that? Would be taking a lead to come back and some numbers to us, because once again, this is a discussion, so. Even though we make a decision today and we come back with something, doesn't mean we can't question it, we can't move forward. But I guess it's just kind of giving us some kind of direction, and maybe also after some kind of fact sense of what it's looking at.
I like to see it, whatever their recommendation might be, that would not like for us to kind of get hung up with the parking like we did with the park, because, we came back this year for the parking. There was a lot of misunderstanding on either outport or airport, so, but I definitely would like for the three to give us some suggestions.
So it looks like we got three who would like to see three come back with some suggestions, but also like to be able to keep in mind that we do have people who have been out there commercially that want to be or consider whether way for them. Kind of phasing them in maybe.
Yeah, I just don't wanna slap our small commercial business owners in that East Basin, I just don't wanna slap them with the market rate. I know that F3 is perfectly capable of coming up with some good examples and doing the research. Just being sensitive to this particular user group. In the BWAP committee, we had some, concerns about hitting them with it, so I trust F3 to do the outreach when the time comes, but I think we should slap them with the market rate on January 1.
I just think it's a very short time period for them to prepare for next year. I have no problem thinking about this for 1 year from now, but I mean, I would hate for a small business to have such a short amount of time to prepare for this. That's my concern. It's our definition.
But they don't come with recommendation, is that not correct? That's all we're asking, a recommendation. We're not asking for. We're not asking for a rock solid figure, we just asked what are the recommendations that were, at least that's what I'll be. The number one record or suggestion of the fee.
They can come back with a recommendation and we can take a look at it to see if it is meeting the timeframe in which we need to have a local commercial businesses ramp up without having. Right now, we don't have any direction, which we need to find sometime. So
I guess the question is, are we, if we put these small businesses out of businesses, Mexican funds, I guess we're saying, well, that's just how the market operates.
That's not acceptable to me, but.
And I'm not sure they're gonna come back with that type of suggestion.
Again, there are 5 commercial operators. One of them has a price contract. Go see the other 4 and ask them what's reasonable. Area's not hard to find.
So I was saying maybe.
Water's not hard to find.
Yeah, so there's the outreach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for a point of clarification, the remote team with you doesn't start working for you till November 1st.
Would you like me to call her and ask you?
No, sir, I asked him.
It's not that hard.
again, this is what, we'll do whatever you tell us to do, but if you wanted the market rate pricing on the 13 comparables, I believe that they would have that and can share it with you. If you want the F3 team to engage with your current vendors, that would begin after November 1st when they're on staff. So I'm just gonna point out facts of how you can traverse your own team.
Yeah, and these small business owners, they've already planned for next year, yeah. They've already got their budget in mind for the next calendar year.
I'm impatiently waiting for clear direction. If you tell us to go November 1 door to door, we do that. If you want us to provide you data in 2 weeks on the 13 analyses, we'll do that. If you want us to hold, we'll do that. We just need to know what direction. And I appreciate Commissioner Oliver covering my price, but my job is to be your messenger. And so you tell us what message you want carried, and we'll carry your message.
So when you say the 13th, you're talking about the board of commissioner meeting in November?
No, ma'am, I believe that Ms. Lori indicated that we had 13 comparative marinas, which would be 14 days from today would be your workshop. And I think they would be prepared to share that data, or you could wait until they have an engagement with your vendors after November 1. It's really the pleasure of the elected as to how you'd like us to engage in solidifying budget. We're willing to do whatever it is you want us to do.
It sounds like you could wait until after November 1, and be able to satisfy just place concerns here.
Yeah, I mean, we should hear their suggestions and the numbers, and we can also hear how to engage.
So we'll ask F3 to begin that after November 1st, which should mean that your first meeting in November should fall theoretically November 10th, which is the day before Veterans Day.
Yes.
I'm not gonna commit for our two friends on the phone, but in 10 days, I'm not sure that they could get all that accomplished for you, but if they can, we would gladly report it to you on November 10th.
Okay. Would you like that?
And Matt, can I just make a suggestion, Matt? It might be a good idea for us to present you with what we believe the market rate is. Look at what the percentage of increase would be for each of these commercial entities to meet that rate, and then maybe come up with a scale that gets them to market over time, so that we can address both issues of getting to market rate as well as not getting there immediately. And then for any new vendors coming in, they would be paying market upfront. There would not be that same sliding scale, so to speak. And is that something that you would like to see us at least lay out the numbers so that you can see what you're really trying to decide?
That would help, but would there be engagement, direct engagement with the commercial operators during this process?
We would need to talk with them about their pricing other than what we've already been able to ascertain with what we've provided.
And I believe Lori would be boots on the ground in November, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll be there November 1st.
I think that's a very viable and proactive recommendation.
Okay. Feel comfortable with that?
So we won't be able to provide you data in the next 2 weeks. You'll wait till F3's on the ground. They'll engage each of the current vendors to ascertain what they're actually paying and have a conversation and report back to you as swiftly as possible, as potentially as fast as November 10th. But I want to be clear to the board that if you're looking for that data the Wednesday in advance, that'll be incurred 72 hours, and I think that might be a second.
We'll take when the agenda packet comes out.
But that's the thing, you can't packet would come out,
Wednesday.
the one which is not reasonable. She gets here on November 1st, I think.
Where did these numbers that are on this report come from?
All the, which numbers are you referring to? I can tell you my answer, tell me where you're pointing at. I don't know what you're pointing at.
Reporting the commercial rates where they're stated and what they're paying over here, where did they come from?
That was provided us by a member of the Equal Committee, and then I forwarded that information to F3.
Well, let's see what they can do. We'll move forward to letting them come in on November 1st and do their assessment, including engagement with the commercial vendors.
And our target date is to have F3 present with us on Monday, November 10th, if possible.
If
That's not good. Okay.
All right, so your next question is about dock insurance. I'll let you finish writing that down.
Thank you. So the dock insurance, and I think we have a consensus for inclusion of protection of the docks at near $100,000. Is that what the board would like to see happen? Is there anybody in opposition of including dock protection fund?
Looks like you're all in favor, right?
Okay. What about business interruption protection at that $50,000 to $55,000 number? Would you like to include it or not include it? And keep in mind, from staff's perspective, our recommendations are not included in benefits.
I would recommend not putting, I think that they've made that such a difficult item for food. To counter that hurricanes and so forth, that it's extremely difficult.
That was also the statement
Already
already.
playing that as well, so.
No business interruption.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and then the third one is budget assumption.
Let me go back and clarify one thing, man. Are you comfortable with the number 2.5 million? Because your policy is based on percentage, and so we're recommending the 2.5 million and 100,000 if you're comfortable with that. Which I think you are. Just clarify. Okay. So business interruption.
Can I ask, you asked that even if that's free, like are they comfortable that that might be able to build back something adequate?
We're getting real market numbers in our region, so we're utilizing the local contractors. And so I think that that's a hard number. But you could ask that for tonight if they think 2.5 million is adequate or low or high. So would you all have an opinion on reconstruction of the docks at 2.5 million?
I don't know if Hunter wants to chime in on this one. I'm gonna say 2.5 million for reconstruction of the docks is low.
Yeah, it's 2.5 million would do maybe a third of the marina in its current existing layout.
So we have differences of opinion, so what we're gonna do is get hard factual numbers from our local contractors on replacement of floating houses. And keep in mind, if you were to double it from 2.5 to 5 million, your policy goes from 100 to 200,000. It's the comfortability of where you are for insured, overinsured, or underinsured.
All right. So we're pretty solid on the business interruption.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And you answered my questions that we sent over. I'm not sure if our friends from F3 have any additional clarifiers that they'd like to see from the council as we continue to develop your version 2 of your draft budget.
One final thing is it looks like, the estimate of rentals per month is about 25%. Lower for F3, but that is conservative based on 30% occupancy. But we are assuming in subsequent years that we're gonna ramp that up and improve occupancy. So that's still the assumption
I
that
can
kind of
speak
been
to
our
first.
handful.
Internally, we believe 30% is the lowest, but we would rather come in low and overachieve and set a number that we don't reach. You also have a disruption in fuel delivery for 90 days, which is important, but it's also the winter period. And so if you're looking at winter dockage in December, January, February, and March, you have some traditional pricing that's in there and a peak gap of 8 months to secure. So they have proposed a 30% occupancy rate, I believe, and if not, Lori or Hunter could speak to that if they have a different model.
I was just assuming that we would try to improve that in subsequent years, and I was just assuming that it's a like the condition for that.
We yes, and I'll let them answer that. That's
Okay.
So Lori or Hunter, if you want to speak to how you gravitated to the 30% occupancy rate, I'd be appreciative.
Sure. We looked at the pro forma that was done for the property. It was based on a 30% occupancy. We then took the rates that customers are currently paying to be there, and that's how we came up with those numbers. We believe that some of your numbers for market are low, especially for the smaller boats. So we see an immediate area that we can increase. And certainly we believe with the right marketing, the website presence, just what we can bring to the table in terms of making this marina accessible with technology for booking reservations, that we will see a much increased occupancy. But for budget purposes, we didn't want to inflate anything. We wanted to, at least for the 6 months, come in at what we thought was the bare minimum of what we should do financially. And then after the 6 month period, especially the peak season that you're going to see April, May, and June, the following budget years would be based on that kind of performance.
Thank you.
Lori, I have a question for you. Looking at the payroll expense usually is one of the larger expenses for a business. And looking at the payroll here, you have 5 dock hands listed. Currently, I think the docks operate with much lower number than that. You also have an administrative assistant, the general manager for the marina, and then obviously the regional manager as well, and maintenance supervisor. Just curious as well, you believe that all of these positions are essential, or if the dock may be able to be run at a much smaller staff.
So the payroll build out that you see there is what we think would be optimal if this place is fully booked. So if you have boats coming and going out of all of those slips, that's essentially what your payroll should look like. We want the customer service obviously to be top notch. We want the reviews that are showing up on the websites to be top notch. And so we do believe you need dock hands in order to do that. What we did for the first 3 months, though, is we reduced the hourly employees of the 5 dock hands and the administrative assistant by 50%. So you would not see that full build out for the first 3 months. We left it in for the following 3 months, but we will only ramp up with staff according to what the business is actually needing. And so if we don't need that many people, we're not going to hire that many people. We'll start initially with our general manager, our regional manager, and some dock hands, and then we'll build out from there.
Any further questions for Lori or Matt? Are we good?
I'm great.
Okay, Matt.
Forget that, anything else that you'd like us to see addressed for you in the next 2 weeks? My anticipation is that there won't be a conversation, we shot the agenda first into this, and we'll be delayed into the November 10th meetings. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so now we're going to move on to the resolution adopting a town vehicle and equipment replacement policy. As Elizabeth was saying.
I would gladly address it. This is the legacy conversation of the vehicular replacement policy that the town board has seen in the past, and you've asked us to review it for any changes or updates. We did include the potential for lease vehicles, because we do have 2 in the fleet out of the 60-ish units that we have, or 55 units. Nothing else has changed, and we're just looking for a formal concurrence to adopt the vehicular replacement policy.
Any questions for Matt on that? There's no questions. What is the pleasure of the board when it comes down to adopting this resolution?
Make a motion to adopt the town vehicle and equipment replacement policy.
Got a motion on the floor. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. Now we're gonna move on to the sublease agreement of 159 Turner Street parking lot.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the comments that were made earlier during public comment from Mr. Harper. I can address some of those issues in my updated sublease agreement, but it is the parking lot at the corner of Turner and Ann. It has a reference of 159 Turner, but it also has an address on Ann Street. We refer to that under the current name of Pivot, but they've also have a name of Lunar. So It is actually that portion of their parking lot, some people associated with the Baptist church, and it was made very clear to me that there's a separation between the Baptist church and the leasing of that land for IRS purposes. So that parking lot is currently leased to the Pivot/Lunar Group. And the purpose and reason or rationale behind this conversation is we had to make an immediate decision pertinent to the USDA project to begin engaging on construction on Turner Street with the 100 block between front and the end. The mayor and I actually went door to door together to convey those necessary improvements. Our staff worked on a very important community engagement outreach, which was held at the hall, based on the feedback of our merchants who had to have this, if you will, repair thrust upon them. It's something that we didn't want to do as quickly as possible, but based on the scope of work for the USDA project, the impacts of Turner Street had to begin October 6th and are theoretically scheduled to go through the first of the year. There will be a complete shutdown of Turner Street, which means no controlled access during the months of November and December. This entire board, our current staff, have engaged with our business owners to understand that impact during both the Thanksgiving period and all the way into the Christmas holiday, as well as fourth quarter or extension of the shoulder season, is a pretty major blow. And what we're trying to do is show how we can and try to make sure that our economic development and our engagement with all of our businesses is equitable and fair. I want to thank the Pivot Group or Lunar for offering out the opportunity to engage and purchase or pre-renting that space for November, December at a very reduced rate of $5,000 a month. Those dollars that would be invested into accessing that lot for public use would be paid for out of our USDA project out of our contingency line up. We believe that renting that lot for $10,000 for 60 days is a good investment of those dollars to keep those small businesses on Turner as accessible as possible. And we want to reiterate that I'm not sure, it has zero to do with town employee parking. And it is specifically to increase access to those local businesses. That foot traffic is the only way to access them between November, which we believe to be November 10th, and all the way through December 31st. So the board has been very concerned about making sure that those businesses have an opportunity to be as successful as possible in those 2 month periods. So we have already secured certificates of insurance, and I'd like to point out for both the board and the public that the North Carolina League of Municipalities coverage we have extends to that parking lot. There will be no increased cost to us. We've identified that. We received that in writing from the league. We've already received a certificate of insurance for both the sublease parking company and the landholder. Those both have been provided to both parties in advance of the potential acceptance of this agreement. So we're down to the conversation pertinent to the exit onto Ann Street. There's also a simultaneous conversation and permission granted by the property owner to improve, which means to widen that exit, because currently today, if I'm not mistaken, our engineer Sam Bell is with us. That is approximately 10 feet in width, which is due to an exit only. There's an entrance onto Turner and an exit onto Ann. The problem with that is if we close down Turner Street, we want traffic to be able to enter and to exit safely, because we don't want to, one, expose ourselves to a vulnerable liability, expose any of the vehicular operators to a potential accident, and thirdly, to put the owner of the property at great risk. So we have our in-house engineer quickly, and I want to thank Mr. Bell for doing so, provided a design that widens that up to 18 feet wide. And then our planning director carried that information to the Historic Preservation Committee to make sure that the HPC was in concurrence with this potential temporary improvement. We believe that this improvement will be so beneficial that we don't want it to just be a temporary improvement. It does make good sense to invest those dollars and then go back and tighten it back down to 10 feet. So I asked Mr. Garner to, if the board is in agreement with this lease, we would then get on the agenda as early as December for the HPC seeking permanent approval, which we believe we could get. So one, we want to provide increased access for all Beaufort folk that are trying to come downtown, whether they're resident and or guests. Would potential employees of those businesses park there? That may be a choice. That might be how the rumor began, but it has nothing to do with town employees. And each of those parking spaces then would be utilized at no charge in November and December. I'll entertain any questions that you have. I think I've addressed the majority of his concerns as well.
What about the vendor that for the delivery to the businesses?
So we had the open community conversation. We don't anticipate delivery trucks utilizing that parking lot. We have worked with each of the business owners that were present during our community conversations to try to help them with deliveries. They have alternative pathways, whether they utilize the middle lane or they're utilizing the front street. So great question. But I want to also be clear that if a delivery comes at the early hours, I haven't got to police that, but this would be for regular parking. The other major question is the board had extended an opportunity for Fishtown to have a food truck on Turner Street until 12/31. It would be our anticipation with written approval of the property owner or bidding and regular parking to provide an option for Fishtown to place that food truck within the parking lot since the street would be closed. So those are all moving parts that we're working through. But we have secured permission to enhance or improve the exit on it, and they've approved the design drawn by our AD. We secured certificates of insurance for both parties, and we would, if approved tonight, we would engage in conversation with Fishtown, their provider, for placement of that truck to fill.
Question, what time is the construction begin each morning?
Well, the construction today through November 10th starts at 7 AM and goes to roughly 5 PM with the cleanup of the street and the two-way traffic to be available in the first 30 days of the project. And I'd like to remind everybody that all of our communications, all our direct engagements and our handouts indicate that the entirety of the 100 block of Turner Street will be closed down effective as early as Monday, November 10th. And the street will stay closed 24 hours a day through the start. 7 days a week, because once you have a hole that could be 15 to 18 feet deep, you cannot open the street. So you have to do that to safely enhance the sanitary sewer that's going to break down the center of the road. There's no way to continue through the road.
I mean, most delivery trucks that service the businesses directly on Turner do not come that early.
Will it be 24-hour closure? That's the problem. The road will not be open at all.
I know what I'm saying, the delivery trucks pretty much down there each morning. Most of them do not come around until about 9:30. And being on Middle Lane, some of those trucks, that'd be a hard turnaround.
So we've met with each of the businesses and we've explained the constraints that are existing, and we're trying to work through that with each particular business that's currently object.
Just saying.
No, we understand that's why this is such a complex problem, why we had our community engagement meeting is to work through them. Because if you have a delivery vehicle, we have provided an advertised alternative truck route that is on our handouts, it's on our flyers, it's currently on all our social medias. That truck route gives you options on how to avoid the 100 block turn. But thankfully, being a great community, it's relatively easy to figure out how to move around. But the concern is going to be the width of the road or the amount of vehicular parking that's on the road. And so there's a series of constraints while we're trying to do this portion of the road.
Now, I have a question about flexibility of the contract. There is the ability to either extend or get out of contract early.
There's neither. There was some discussion about an option to extend, and I feel like the sublessor, the property owner would be open to that, but based on the construction schedule, staff thought sticking with November and December out of the gate was best. But there's no option to get out of
Construction, I think we want to maybe have the option to extend based on.
certainly.
If there's an option that exists that we choose to engage, but I think at this point, we're trying to complete before Christmas. And obviously, if we had an extended period of rain like we had over this week, that it could delay construction, but I want to be very clear that the property owner has conveyed to us in writing that if we choose or opt to extend it in January, that option is up.
And how long do we think widening of the Van Street, that entrance exit will take?
I don't have that answer yet. We'll have to determine because our current contractor that is doing the work will be able to help us with that widening based on the current contract price. But based on how quickly TD Loving has done other work, I wouldn't suspect it would be very long.
I imagine signage would be covered in that parking lot because currently they have QR.
We are required to take down all signage and required to put up our own signage and then required to put their signage back on.
And will we be doing any monitoring for people who may want to long-term park there or extend park over? The parking lot?
So that's a great question. We could look at enforcement with the PD overnight and based on what we advertise for the parking,
Since private property would be passing that over.
it's a great question. I don't have the answer. Chief or Deb, like, tell me, we might be able to work through that real time now. Great question.
We can look into that.
Because I want to point out that our parking season would conclude October 31st and our parking ambassadors will be gone.
Any further questions? Okay. Based on that, what is the pleasure of the board when it comes down to approving to rent the parking lot at 159 Turner Street for the months of November and December 2025?
Into a service agreement, which is not Turner Street Park.
We've got a motion on the floor, any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Alright.
Those that stand by. Now we're gonna move on to the manager's report.
I mean, I had nothing else to add, so you get any questions or anything since the last November.
Well, then we'll move on to mayor and commissioner comments. Let's start with you, Commissioner Bigelow.
I guess first off, I want to thank the town public works with seeing the flooding that we had this past weekend downtown. And the amount of debris on the streets and so forth. I was really impressed driving this morning to town, seeing street sweeper out and all the workers out, basically clearing up. If you look at it right now, you really can't tell if we had as much flooding and down debris basically on our streets. So kudos to them. Really appreciate them. And I want to thank Peter Brown. So great thing we just back that proclamation. I know for me, when I go to other communities, Peter's kind of taught me something. He's given me the opportunity to kind of look at the other communities and what they've done and see, especially when I walk the streets and I see that maybe that they've actually put their place mats, the tactile sensation mats in the wrong position, the wrong direction. So makes me want to kind of reach out to them, but he's spreading that information and that knowledge to everyone, and I give him credit for making that effort, and I want to thank him for what he's done.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
No thoughts this evening.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
Yeah, just feedback on Commissioner Bigelow just stated. And as Peter stated as well, I did take that walk with him. And I know we're not all gonna rush and go and do that, so I'll just thank for you that it's a difficult task. Him being excited was saying I've seen one or two others that we have around here in Baltimore, so it is a tremendous asset that we are, or that even North Carolina is toughening up that law. But the day I went with Peter, and I already did the no close your eyes thing, and it was scary. And a car came in, and Peter said, "Do you see it? Do you feel it?" And I'm like, "No." He said, "Well, the car just passed." And then once we walked from his home out to Leadfield Road, it is amazing. People they don't pay attention to him, none whatsoever. And I grabbed him just in the nick of time as the car was making a turn, and if I had grabbed him, it would have hit him. And we need to be more mindful of the cyclists and other handicapped around here, both.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver? Thank you. Commissioner Stevens? I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here participating today, and I also want to say thank you to the Beaufort Police Department, and they did a great job on National Night Out and all the other staff involved with that, we had a great time, and again, it's always a great event, and my son was very, very upset when we had a little bit of that, so thank you guys, it was great, I look forward to it again next year. And also, just want to say we're looking forward to Halloween, and I've heard from a number of people that are excited for posting on the street. So I think that's gonna be great this year too. And that's all that. Okay, thank you very much. I want to encourage everybody to shop local. Not only do we have the Turner Street construction going on, we also have construction up roundabout that's taking place simultaneously. So please make that effort to support your local businesses. These are businesses that have supported us during hurricanes, during the impact of health crises. So let's go ahead and continue to support them because they have supported this community in many ways. Also want to thank the police force for doing National Night Out. I really enjoyed that. It was a very robust crowd, and everybody wants to know where these tanks are coming from. But you've got a lot of participation, and also thank for the person who was in the dunk tank. I don't know who that was, but they probably get sick leave, everybody who does that. Also want to continue to thank Beaufort Food and Wine, had an opportunity to go through the firehouse that they had, raise money to donate. For us to use, and the fire department to use for education, it was really nice to have upgraded appliances in this little. So it's gonna be a nice thing for our firefighters to use for education. And I just want to close with a statement, because tonight was a very heavy meeting, we've had to make a very tough decision for the town of Beaufort, and this was not an easy decision for the board, and I wanted to acknowledge the weight of that. Taking out the additional $6.5 million loan is significant for a town our size, and we had a difficult choice that was not made lightly tonight. We were guided by the responsibility to ensure that the water infrastructure remains strong, reliable, and prepared for the future. And these upgrades are crucial, not just for today, but for a future generation. So while we are mindful of our financial impact, we also recognize the delay that this work will only increase. Oh, I'm sorry. That this work will only increase the cost later and the risk, and the risk will be even greater if we don't do something today for our households and our businesses that depend upon that. So I want to thank staff for helping to relay that message. Our engineers, the USDA, once they get back and said, you're working closely with us, and they did do that. To identify these solutions to help us have this opportunity to invest in Beaufort's future. And we also have a new staff member with us, Ms. Jennifer Wellborn, say thank you. And Matt wanted to make sure that we recognize that she's our new community engagement director, and she has boots on the ground already. So she has attended several meetings so far. We had a meeting with the seniors at Beaufort by the Sea. You've done a few other outreaches as well. We've met with a local business roundtable, which we were there together on that one. So she's already been invested, and she's got great ideas. I don't know how you're keeping up with them, but already she sees a lot of things that can be done, and we're so glad to have you on board. It was a great investment. Thank you. With that being said, I just want to go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn. Got a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Great night, everybody.